Hey guys, what's good? It's Wes. So we are here on the channel doing something we kind of either haven't done before or did so far long ago. I can't remember the last time we did it. But you know, this is an art channel, right? We've talked about like art programs. We've talked about my favorite brushes and like keyboard settings and how to set up a workstation and all that stuff. And there's been something really missing on the, art channel, art and art tips. And how to paint. So I thought, let's kick off a little sub-series on the channel called Wes's Art Tips, or Wes's Art School, Wes's Art something. Let me know in the comments which one you like the best, and but Wes's Art Tips seems to be kind of the best because these are going to be bite-sized tips on very specific things that are going to be asked either by my patrons or on my Discord channel by art students or other veterans like all around the world. And we just talk art stuff. It's a great place to hang out, a lot of fun. But there are some times that we get specific techniques that we want to look at, and there's no real good place to discuss it besides the Discord. And I thought, hey, let's start making some videos talking about this stuff. I can show how I approach it, some lessons, and then share it with YouTube and all of you fine, beautiful people for absolutely free. So hopefully that sounds good. We're going to jump right into episode number 1 of Wes's Art Tips. And we're going to be taking a look at color variation in our shadows. So yes, let's take a look at this topic. Really controlling color variation, maybe like shifting hues, doing things like that in our shadows. Now this principle also applies for highlights and midtones. If you want to get subtle shifts of your color, make things a little more spicy, a little more interesting to look at. But we're going to talk about this by looking at the Discord. So yeah, the Discord, the link will be in the description. You can join it absolutely free. We'd love to have you. And yeah, we talk about this type of stuff all the time, like every day. So there's going to be little things that we see other artists do or like techniques that we really want to capture. And then we just talk shop. Like, how would we approach this? How would we do this? It's a lot of fun. So this one comes up a lot. And it really comes up with the digital artists. Because I'm going to kind of skip ahead a little bit, but this is really difficult to do, or it's not difficult to do as a digital artist. It's just you have to be very deliberate to do it. It's something that happens naturally with traditional paint, whether it's like watercolors, ink, acrylics, oils. Really, the wetter, the better.
That's what she said.
Yeah, I probably phrased that weird, but but really naturally when you paint and you put pigment on top of pigment, you're already going to have subtle shifts and hue variations, regardless if you have like an underpainting, especially if you do like a grisaille or maybe like burnt sienna or raw umber, and then you let that kind of settle, and then you start painting your colors on top of it. The paint doesn't go on fully like adhered, like whenever you have a bristle brush or something, unless you're really skilled and know exactly what you're doing, the paint is not going to be perfectly even all across the brush. However, with a digital brush, it's all based on algorithm. And even with things like Rebel and Art Rage and Krita and these other programs that can do really good wet into wet painting, you're still a little bit too exact. So what ends up happening is you're very kind of color deaf, which is a weird term, but you sort of put, oh, my shadows are brown. If or even like temperature wise, if my highlights and my light is warm, my shadows are cool. Like if you work temperature based like that, right? But you kind of get locked in on the one color that looks pretty good, and then you sort of put it down, and then everything looks kind of flat. There's no vibrance. There's no aliveness, as it were. So let's actually jump over here to the Discord, and I'm going to ask this. This is asked by Ivan, really cool guy. All these artists are incredible on the Discord channel, and we're just going to read it verbatim. Read some of the responses, which are chef's kiss, just to kind of give you an idea of what the Discord is like. But then I'm going to show you a live painting that I'm working on right now for this very reason. I want to practice this technique. I want to practice this and really nail it down. So here we are on the Discord. And Ivan says, all right, guys, since Rick prompted me to ask, I'm still struggling with achieving nice color variation in the same hue range, if that makes sense. Let me grab an example painting by Ilker Serdar. I butchered that name. I'm so sorry. I think the full name is Ilker Serdar Yildiz. And I'm a dumb hick from the Midwest, so my pronunciation of my pronunciation of everything's kind of off. So deeply apologize if I got it wrong. But I know him best as the artist behind Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, which we're going to look at some of that stuff here in a second. But it says, like, look at all the subtle color shifts in this little guy. So I'm going to post the actual image up right here. I do have it on... like here, if I want to make this a little bigger, let me make this bigger. I can actually link to this in the description, because I want you to be able to kind of see it in the full vividness that you can see it, because the video is going to compress it. Me going through this video is going to compress these ranges and stuff. But there is some really nice shifts. I can see some grays, some greens, reds. There's a little bit of pink, maybe some purples. There's a lot of little subtle shifts going on. So I know exactly what he means. And then you can also see it here on the Bannerlord artwork. Like, holy crap, man. This is art goals through and through. If you were to do nothing but master studies of Ildar's art, you would become a master like overnight, basically. Just incredible, like stuff in the leather. Like, this dude is unfreaking believable. One of my favorite artists to look at, to get really inspired to render more, because like even the skin tones and stuff, this is the low resolution and you can still see all this grittiness and great. But there's other artists that do this really well. So Benjamin Zhang Bing is, he's known as Benjamin online, but this is all digital. So I thought it was curious, and you can see some purples here, some like cyans. I love Benjamin. I have his graphic novel called Orange. It came out, God, 20 years ago now. But like, look at this. Are you kidding me? You want to talk about color variation? Holy crap. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And it's so cool. And you can see that pink like here in the shadows and like all this, and like just wonderful stuff. And you can tell that this was just painted in there. Deliberate. It's very deliberate, this type of thing. You just don't accidentally get this. And even like this green here, because of the orange mixing with the yellow, mixing with the like beautiful stuff, right? But also you have Simon Bisley, who's been mentioned on the Discord. Great, fantastic artist. Look at all of these, man. Oh, so whenever we talk about the underpainting and like traditional paint seeping over top, and then you get these nice variations, this is what I mean. Look at this, man. That's that's to die for. And like in the shadows, I mean, there are so many good masters. Of course, Frank Frazetta, Leyendecker, Rockwell, James Gurney. I mean, Nathan Fowlkes, I could list people, Cynthia Shepard and Carla Ortiz. There's so many good artists that do this, and they do it super well. And see, here's a more kind of monochromatic, but then if you actually come and look at some of the variations within here, in the same value range, you have these nice spicy little, like, that's a hit of gray, makes it look very blue since it's next to the yellow. This goes into some color theory. And of course, Igor Sid. This is just one, but Igor Sid is one of my favorite Warhammer artists ever. And his stuff is unfreaking believable. And if you want to talk about super subtle shifts in the same value range, grandmaster level stuff here. Like, so if you're interested in any of these artists, I'm going to have links to their stuff in the description. But I wanted to give a shout out. But yeah, those Elkor, just so cool. Even the like, God, his shapes are amazing. I could look at that all day. But I'm doing a little painting, which we'll look at in a minute. It's a study of this apple deal, which we will talk about. But let's read some of these responses real quick. So just look at all the subtle color shifts on this little guy. Like whenever I try to do it, it looks sort of forced. It doesn't feel organic. That's because it is forced. You have to deliberately do this. You have to make it part of your structure. We'll talk about that when we get to this live painting segment, but like you have to plan it ahead, or else it's not going to happen. It just won't it won't happen naturally. Now, if you're using watercolor, it will happen naturally. In fact, you have to deliberately not do it whenever you're working with traditional medium. But yeah, so it's kind of that push and the pull. And you have to really be deliberate about adding that in, because digital art is very like the algorithmic. It's mathematical. Like all your blending modes, all this stuff, it's all based on math. You're getting an exact yes or no binary response, even with like really nice like Corel Painter or Rebel or Art Rage. It's still very close to mathematically perfect, rather than, based on how you're holding the brush or how like well cleaned it is whenever you're working with oils or acrylics. And not to say one's better than the other, like digital versus traditional. It's just certain techniques are way easier to do with traditional art. And also there's way easier techniques to do with digital art. It just is what it is. You use the right tool for the job. So the easiest way to get this effect is to paint traditionally. That's the easiest way. But we are going to do it in hard mode. We're going to do it here and show you kind of how I would approach it and how I do approach it when a client asks for feedback. Hey, can we spice up the shadows a little bit? Can we do something? We'll take a look at that. So Rick has the first response. Best way to understand this approach, at least from my experience, would be to start in gray tones and then in the end add a color overlay layer. That's kind of my preferred method to do it. I agree with this. I'm also going to show you another way. But yeah, that would be good because you're going to be starting with values. And really, it's funny. Ivan said the correct thing twice, like in two different ways. I'm still struggling with achieving nice color variation in the same hue range, if that makes sense. So really, he means the value range, like in the shadows or your darker midtones or, however, he kind of gave away the answer, or basically why it's hard to do whenever he said the same hue range. Because with digital artists, we might use the multiply layer, lock in our color that we want for our shadows, and that's one hue. So that is the same hue range. So he's right. You know what I mean? He's right on both counts. It has to do with value. But as digital artists, we are very guilty of staying within one hue range. Now, if you want more color theory stuff, if some of this terminology is going a little fast or something, I have 2 courses on simplifying color theory. Simplifying color theory part 1 talks about what makes up a color. Basically, what is hue, what is saturation, what is value, what is temperature. When people look at the color wheel, how do you break it down? Just a very kind of basic introductory. However, it does go into more, I guess, like working artists sort of perspective of what the color actually means. So in Simplifying Color Theory Part 2, which just came out, and I'll have links to all this in the description, goes more into this exactly. Like, what's the difference between chroma and saturation? And why is that important? And if you were to paint over grayscale, how would you know what color to pick based on what value you have, based on what your mood is, based on what your... So it gets very kind of in the weeds and nitty gritty. So I would highly recommend Simplifying Color Theory Part 2. It's almost like 4 hours long, and we dive in, man. We totally dive in. But yeah, I recommend it. People that have bought it really love it. So if you're interested in that, I'll have the link to my shop in the Gumroad and ArtStation, wherever you like to buy your stuff. I'll have some links in the description below for you. But yeah, so Rick says, at least my experience starting the gray tones. And then Ivan says, I actually never thought of starting with values. So I always start with values. It just makes my life easier. Like I said, I'm a Midwest idiot. I can only do one thing at a time. So if I get my values locked in, then I can worry about adding the color, then add the saturation, then add some variety, then make the brushwork look better, then work on my edge control, then like alter the composition. Like, you know what I mean? I have to do this, then this, then this, that, and trying to do it all at once. It's a recipe for disaster. So Rick says, it's easy to overlook, but now that you realize it, you can hopefully see it's basically just value shifts. Kind of. So you actually don't want to shift the value. We'll look at that in a minute. But you want to make sure your values are very clearly defined. That's what makes like Ilker's work so good, is like he has very defined values. There is a hard shadow, closer shadow, mid-tone, like yeah, and never nary the two shall meet, you know. Yeah, those tones seem to be all the same value. That's what gets me. If you turn that image into grayscale, the value is the same. But when I try to keep the value the same, you can barely notice any shift in color. Yes, that's kind of by design. Also, that's why it's so deliberate. You have to work for those shifts. They don't always all work, but you can do some really cool stuff if you put your mind to it and just dedicate a good half hour just to doing this one technique. And there's myriad of ways that you can do it, but if you just dedicate the time, you block out, okay, this painting session, I'm just going to make my colors in my shadows have more variety. Don't worry about the rest of the painting. Just worry about spicing up a little bit of what those shadows are. So then, yeah, whenever you put it in the grayscale, you add a color overlay on this and it should give you the same effect, but with the colors used. And then he says, well, like, what do you mean? Well, what art application are you using? You can change layer styles. There's usually a layer style called color that keeps the values and adds the color to it. And to note this, whenever you use a color layer, it does not touch the values. If you use overlay or soft light or multiply or hard light or something like that, it actually does alter the values based on the chroma of the color you pick on the color wheel, okay? So then I come in, yeah, the best way to blah, blah, blah. I'm about to tell you guys all this, right? But basically I do mention like the color overlay approach. And then Ivan actually says something really interesting. And I want to talk about this too as part of this, because I think it's very important. The thing is that I hate myself and avoid using blend modes if I can. I want to learn the idea behind it, if that makes sense. It makes total sense. And you're absolutely right. It's almost impossible to get right without using some blending mode first. You can. It's just like you can make any type of painting with a hard round brush, but you're going to be beating your head on the keyboard, right? So if you try it first, try it in this way I'm actually going to show. So we talk about, hey, digital color is actually very tricky. It works in the exact opposite way that something like a traditional, like subtractive color theory and mixing might work. So digital is additive color theory, and we talk about that in Simplifying Color Theory Part 2. We break all that stuff down, look at the math behind it, really go into it, right? And then I just like to avoid relying on the tool to reach a certain result. I get it. I like to call it the holier than thou. The monk, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a diss on Ivan or anybody, because everybody at a certain point feels like this. Well, if I was a good artist, I could do it without using the stupid blending modes, right? But I'm here to tell you, I'll show you the best of both worlds. Use the blending mode to get the idea of what you want to see. Then paint on top of that. Use what you're going to do with your blending modes as an underpainting, and then color pick, paint on top. All right? That's... If you're going to work digital because it's easier or the ease of use for a client, make it easier. Like, just do that, okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to jump over here into Photoshop, show you where I'm at on my study, kind of what I'm going to do as my next step. But then we're going to spice up those shadows to give those nice variations, those nice shifts, so you can see my principle and the thinking behind it in real time. So we're going to be right back. All right, guys, what's up? So we're here and we're looking at the study that I'm doing. So I will have a link to this in the description. This is from Unsplash, and I'll have the photographer's name and everything there. Unsplash is a great website for these type of references, but I wanted to do something that actually had a lot of shadow and had a lot of form and shape. However, looked a little bit monotone, a little bit not punchy, because I want to punch this up. Does that make sense? Not necessarily make it better. It's just, this is a photograph and I'm making a painting, and there's a difference. If you're just going to make the photograph, if you're just going to do a study so exact to a photograph, just take the picture again. Don't be a Xerox machine. Like, make creative decisions when you're doing these studies, especially when it comes to a technique that you're trying for the first time, because the composition's done, right? I zoomed in a little bit on mine. We'll take a look. I kind of zoomed in a little on mine. Yeah, all my edges, they look like peppers right now because of all the hard edges that I have, but I'm going to soften some of those out, make it look more like apples. But yeah, let me move this here because we might pull this in every now and then, but really, we're kind of done with this. I might look at it to smooth out some of this, but I don't want to do like the full painting on this. I just want to show you what I would do to spice up these shadows. Then we might put a little time lapse. I don't know. The Wes's art tips might be a little bit more direct rather than here's a 4-hour painting sped up to 5 minutes. We'll do something a little more real time here. So you can see I had a mix of Rebel and Krita. I'm actually beta testing Rebel, so I could not show some of this stuff, but you can tell. I mean, you can just literally tell some of these textures and stuff are very Rebel-esque, especially if you like come down here. You see some of these impasto marks. These are some of the Memelio brushes, some of the RGBA brushes and Krita, but really this is majority Rebel. And now I'm bringing it in to Photoshop. So what's funny, if you notice, we actually have okay, there's a sketch layer. So kind of show you what I did. I did my value pass first, right? I did work in values to make sure that I got a little bit of darker shadows, the ambient occlusion shadows, which are closer to black, but not quite black. Then I had really, really kind of dark, what I would call dark midtones, because the real highlights are going to be here in the light, right? And make sure I got my shapes. So yeah, I had my, I just mapped out my shadows here and then did this. And then you can see, then from here, I actually worked with a color overlay. And then also what I did, I worked in color overlay and then worked with just use that as an underpainting and painted on top. So now that's where you can see all these other brush strokes that I put here. But there's already some variation. You see some of these coolers and a little bit of the red and the brighter green, a more vivid green, next to kind of the yellow greens. Next to the grays, next to the... So this is kind of mimicking painting with a dirty brush. And even in some of the highlights, just the lack of opacity on some of the brush passes, like that still gets you kind of there. So a lot of this is just paint messy. You're going to get a lot of happy accidents if you paint messy. Okay. And then like see kind of right here, I do need to refine some of this, but it's good enough for what we're wanting to do for right now. And yeah, some of these kind of blended in, and you see what I mean? So pretty good. Yeah, you can see the Rebel canvas texture on there too. So if I were to spice this up, because I do think it is a little monochromatic, what's the thing I would do? So what I would do is I would actually make this grayscale again. So the way I'm going to do that, hit the new layer, edit, fill, yeah, 50% gray's fine. Then I'm going to go to color. So this is the color mode we're talking about, right? And I'm going to grayscale that out, okay? Now, this is kind of a weird one. So I want to keep these exact colors that I have right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my painted layer, the one that has all the colors and stuff already on it, right? And I'm going to duplicate it. Okay. And then move this above my grayscale. Because if you notice, as I turn it on and off, nothing's happening. Because these colors are exactly matching what we have. So if I were to turn that off, but if I turn this back on, all the colors still match correctly. But do you notice the values? Like if you notice, especially like right here, keep your eye right here. The values are pretty blended in, right? These are pretty close to the same value. And I'm going to turn on the color overlay in 3, 2, 1. It's a drastic difference. So let's mimic this. So on my color overlay layer, I am going to pick some of these happy accident colors, like this gray blue. I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get kind of like a plastic wrap brush, kind of a painterly brush. It's kind of weird. This is my 2025 brush pack, by the way, that we'll be using. And I'm going to color pick here. Oh, actually, what I have to do. Okay, it did color pick. Okay, cool. I was worried. It picked really, really dark, and I was like, that seems weird. But as long as it's not pitch black, I think we're okay. You see how the value is like at a 7, not at a 0. So there's still a little bit of something, and the saturations here are pretty much cranked up. So the same thing at 5, and then even the value. So very gray next to these greens and these warms. So if I wanted to spice up a few things down here, I could do the same thing. But what I'm going to do, take that kind of nice gray color, and then come in and just sort of, oh, that's why. We'll turn the color overlay. There it is. Okay. Now we're on the color overlay layer. So same thing. Boom. And now you can see we're starting to get subtle little variations here. However, it looks forced. It looks forced. I'm going to use the air quotes because it is. If we really wanted to go kind of buck wild, let's just pick the same, let's color pick, that way we're in the same value, right? And let's shift our hue away from this yellow and orange and stuff. Let's bring it over to cyan. Then let's bring it over, let's color pick here, so make sure our value is correct. Shift the hue to like magenta. Grab that, shift the hue, let's do blue. Color pick that one, color shift, do a cyan again. That one's a little crazier, that's fine. Let me grab this one, hue shift over to that magenta again. See, these are very like poppy, right? These are very poppy colors. Let's go ahead and grab that. Shift over to cyan. I'm really liking the cyans with the greens. They're kind of related, you know? So let's actually do a few darker ones. So let's do here. Let's come over to like pure red. Grab that one. Bring that green back over, a little more saturated green. Grab that. Let's grab something like that. Yeah, that's real close. But let's crank this up and let's go to this magenta. You see that? I have something right here. So you might be looking and be like, you know, that's cool, I guess, but that doesn't look like what we were looking at before. It's not as cultured. It's not as tasteful. It's not as good. Just really, it's not. And you'd be absolutely correct. It's not as good. You want to know how we can make it look pretty good? It's kind of a cheat. It's one of our digital art cheats. Okay, so let's do that. Let's bring that one over to the oranges and kind of those reds right here. So there's actually 2 reasons why it doesn't look great right now. And it's not, one of them's not probably what you think. One of them's like, well, you know, doesn't quite fit the theme, doesn't quite fit the motif, and that's true. But the main reason this doesn't look great and looks fake and forced is these colors, these new hues and saturations, even if they're in the same value range, number one, the chroma of each color is different. So certain colors live certain places. Your blues and your purples are always darker and more saturated in the darks than something like a yellow. Because if you have dark yellow, you basically have brown, right? So that's kind of what we're going to be playing with. But the main thing is the brush strokes do not match the hue. If we have all these beautiful impasto brush strokes where you can see me go like back and forth and back and forth, but then I come here with like a soft round brush and I grab that and I shift this over and I go like this, that brush stroke is not the same as the one. So your eye automatically is like, well, that looks kind of fake. Like that doesn't look as natural as it could. And you're right. It doesn't look natural because it's not. I used a mathematical overlay over top of a brushstroke. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it doesn't look legit. It doesn't look right. I do kind of like how this looks, but if I really want to really like how this looks, I can just take this and lower the opacity to half, right? And then I'm going to hide my grayscale. And now if you zoom in, look at those. That's way more subtle. So what happened? What just happened? This is cranked up at full opacity, right? This is cranked up at full opacity. This is what we have. But since we have an identical non-altered color version underneath this, if I lower the opacity, it's going to reintroduce the colors that we had before anyway. Does that make sense? So if we do this and lower this, then let's say you like it at like, I don't know, right here. Something a little fun, right? Still a little overzealous, still a little too bright and shiny, I think. But let's continue. Let's crank this back up to 100%. Let's continue. Let's do just some wild stuff, okay? Let me grab my plastic wrap brush, okay? I'm going to grab that layer. We're still on the color overlay. I'm gonna grab that. Let's make that more of kind of the magenta right here. Same thing here. Let's make this, it's kind of the yellow greens. So let's bring this over to the blue magentas type stuff. Kind of hit these right here. Now let's do something real fun. Let's just get pure gray. Okay, pure gray. So the value we will match right here. Yeah, let's match a mid-tone. And then let's take that saturation all the way down and hit some of this. See how blue that looks now? That's crazy, right? We'll do another soft round. We can kind of hit it right there. If we grab this, we know we're going to be locked into the value, right? So we just change this hue. And then you can also change the saturation, but it may also mess with the value a little bit. These things are connected. Has to do with chroma. So let's grab that. I like that. Let's do that one. Let's do this and actually crank up the saturation because I like that brown. I do like that brown quite a bit. And really, we can come over here and just add a little bit of other stuff. And what's nice is this is doing all the work for us, right? This looks a little gaudy. It looks a little kind of thrown together because it is. But I will show you the way that I would integrate this. We can even color pick colors we already have to kind of blend back in, okay? And this is what we're going to do on the next step too. Because with a soft brush or something like that, having this kind of variety, kind of haphazard brush strokes is going to help us later. We want to have the controlled chaos of it, right? We want to have a little bit of something to kind of dig into. So the more kind of subtle variations and stuff we can have, the better. Marco Bucci is another artist that can really nail this, and he does with all of his work. He even has a 10-minute, his 10 minutes to better painting videos are genius. I think he's linked at the bottom of my channel because I watch him all the time. But he talks about painting. He does a technique to where basically he does a grayscale overlay. He does the color overlay in grayscale to keep it at values. And then he goes underneath that and picks random colors and just paints. And as long as the value's right, you know, it looks good. But then he unhides the grayscale layer at the end, and you can see all the crazy colors that he has, but it works because the values work. Remember, kids, you know, value does the work, but color gets the credit. It's been an art school staple forever, and it's true. It's absolutely true. So see how we're kind of going here. I'm going to kind of get here and see it doesn't work as well in the midtones. It just doesn't. But if we have something like this, we have something over here. See how bright and vivid that is? It's because the, we can lower that. But even lowering the saturation doesn't do much. Just because this is where magenta lives, man. And since it's literally the complementary of green, like, yeah, it's going to be a real stark contrast, right? But you can play with that. This doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to even look it doesn't even really need to look all that good, to be honest with you. Because when it is going to look good is when we start color picking from this and really putting paint strokes over top, okay? Let's see, we'll temper that one down. That was really the only one kind of bugging me. And then, yeah, we'll temper these down because that magenta is just so strong. But see, I still have a little bit peeking through. A little bit of it's peeking through. And we have some of this. Let's bring some of these. Have some of that. Let's warm that up. Yeah, we'll add some browns. Something like that. So something cool to look at, sure. All right. And yeah, I do like the browns and all that and these shadows. So now we're getting somewhere. I think we're doing pretty good here. Let me kind of bring this out a little bit more because then I want to show you what my next step would be. Okay, so we kind of essentially airbrushed a bit of color variety in here. Okay, my next step would be, yeah, I could like hide the sketch or whatever. But now I would start rendering. I would make a new layer. And now this is my underpainting, right? This is my underpainting. This is what I would color pick from as I'm moving forward. So now I will grab my like main brush one. Let me bring up my Pure Ref. So here's the actual deal. I'm using Pure Ref. The link to this is in the description. It's at the bottom of all of my videos. I get asked all the time about it. It's a great program. So now we have this, and I'm going to name this main painting layer. Okay. So let's say I wanted to actually start working on defining these shapes and stuff now. Great. I have my colors that I can just pick from as long as the value's right. You see, and this is on a normal painting layer. There's no color overlay. This is like we're live painting. You know what I mean? So actually this needs to come over a little more because that needs to come over here and get corrected here. Let me grab some of that purple and actually butt that up against here. Grab that purple, butt that up against here, right? Oh, I like this color because this should be this dark right here. And then scoop this around. We're going to grab kind of the slate purpley color right there. And come in. Lightly come in that way. So see how that's a little more gray than the stuff around it. Grab that. That actually needs to be a pretty bright value. So we're going to do this. And then I'm going to color pick that. Boom. Sharpen that edge. We're going to definitely kind of sharpen that up. Do you see what I mean? Now we're integrating our purple, our greens. We're doing some really subtle stuff here. So we have the gaudiness of these, but if you're tempering it up here and you zoom out, it's almost imperceptible, but there's just enough of a hit of something to make it look interesting. And that's really what Ilker does. Just enough of a hit to make it, there's something about it. You know what I mean? Maybe you might not even have the like vocabulary for it or whatever, but you're like, something about that painting looks really good and I can't quite figure it out. It might be this type of stuff. And see, I even really like, let's go back to the reference here, but let me move it. Because see, I love this purple being our like quote unquote black, right? It's funny, in the next Wes's Art Tips video, we're going to talk about why you should never use black to color yours, or to make shadows, and it's not the reason you think. I won't spoil anything yet, but it's not the reason you think. So see, and I'm going to grab these oranges and something like this. This really works well with a more kind of natural brush. That's why I said with Photoshop, this is actually the hardest this is ever going to be, is because Photoshop, even with a mixer brush, is not made for good like wet on wet painting, right? But if you see this, do you see what I mean? There's just enough little bits of color variety you can have some fun. And yeah, that nice brown, and this goes into the darker color right here. So if we bring that over, bring that in, hit that edge, hit this edge, smooth that out, smooth that out. We have these colors here, kind of give more form to the apple. That's really what was missing. Everything looks so sharp. But see, even we can have that gray, and you see how that gray, it almost looks, it's a little bit too dark. So what I'm going to do is grab this next to it, make this a little bit bigger, kind of sprinkle in some texture there, see? But then I'm going to color pick the rest of this and kind of see, throw in a little variation in the same area, right? Do you see what I mean? Little bits of variation. We're going to smooth some of that out, take care of some of that. Had that gray right here, which I love. I love, love, love gray. Going to get some of the purple, bring that in. This one, we're going to scoop this over, make that a little harsher. We're not going to perfectly round out all of the edges because I do like a few awkward edges. I think that makes for an interesting painting. So we're going to do that. But I'm going to grab that gray, kind of sprinkle it in, paint over it a little bit. That way you're making even new hues with all of this stuff, with your ugly hues that you made earlier. Now you're making new hues and making it look real nice. So, and you can see now, as we kind of zoom out, I think the form's a little off on this, so let me fix this real quick. Let me color pick that. Let me get the soft round, actually. Keep that purple, though. Love that purple. Kind of soften. There you go. Kind of soften this out. And plus, these are out of focus anyway, so it's kind of nice that they have a little bit of color variety, but also soft edges. You're not going to be staring at them the whole time because they're just going to blend out of your focal point. Blend that out, blend that, get rid of that one. So yeah, now we're in just painting mode. We're making this look like a painting instead of a photocopy of something. So we're just kind of digging in, doing the thing. I am going to keep these shifts pretty harsh, just because that's going to make more interesting angles, you know? But you can see I'm color picking from what we already have here, right? And then this. I can even come and do something like these. Bring some of these up. Some of that. Let's do this one. It's a good little brush for making the painterly look. Pick that one. It's a little more green. Cool. So we have something like this right here. Oh, a little much, but we'll temper it down. That's fine. And this texture is random every time I put it down, so I really don't know what I'm going to get. But the whole idea here, yeah, see, we can keep some of these. Little bit of chaos. Yeah, look at that. So see, we're getting the more cyan stuff. We're getting more of the magentas. We're getting that type of thing. And really starting to round this out as far as give it something fun to look at. Give it something interesting to have on it. And this brush does have a little bit of a hue shift on there as well, or a hue jitter, I should say. So doing something like that. We're going to keep the detail here because this is the painting and this is around the focal point. We want the focal point to be the highlights. And I'm just picking, color picking, painting, color picking, painting, color picking, painting. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. I'm going to turn into Bob Ross on you. You're going to get so many good happy accidents, you're not going to even know what to do. And then, as you're still coming forward, and you're still doing the thing, then you can see a little bit more of that variety. So we keep doing this. And you can do this for hours and hours and hours. But in order to get the effect that you want, you have to do this for a long time. You have to either know your brushes like the back of your hand, or know exactly what colors you want as far as your saturations and stuff like that. That's the best way to get this variety, is you have to manually put it in. There's no algorithm to do it for you. There's no filter to run it through. Like, you just got to get in there and you got to do it. But it makes for a more interesting, vivid painting. It's something that somebody wants to look at. Do you know what I mean? Like, people will see it and be like, hey, somebody spent a lot of time on this. I want to look at every single brush stroke. And that's the intent. That's the whole gimmick, right? You want people to look at the art. You want them to engage. I'm going to have a video soon about why I think messy painting is the best way to go, whether you're traditional or digital. Messy, ugly painting is the best way to kickstart your career. It's the best way to get better at your skills. And this deals with that. It's not something exact. It's not a thing like that will be replicated every single time exactly the same way. But that's good. You want variety. Every problem is a different set of problems to solve. Or like every painting is. Sorry. I think I said every problem. I'm in painter mode right now. So, but yeah, you can see the edge work. You can see all this. We can do that. Let's even grab this, shift the hue. Let's do this live. Let's add some of that. And remember, this isn't color overlay. This is full on, like, we're painting live, bud. Got that. A little hit of that. Let's come over here. Let's pick that one. It's not quite dramatic enough for me. Let me hit that with a red. And we'll come back in with this. Let's get the kind of creamy brush right here, kind of temper that in, kind of mix it in. But yeah, this is the best way. This is my preferred method if I needed some variety in here. This is maybe the first and only approach I would do, is I would just do a color overlay. then I would use whatever random colors I had. I would lower the opacity a little bit, make sure it looks as cool as I think it should. Then just use that as my underpainting. Come in and figure it out, you know. Yeah, I think that's really it. So to show you what we did, because now you might be like, well, it doesn't really look all that different, which is kind of true. But if we go in and do okay, there's that one. I know what I'll do. Let me just do this. Select all. We'll make a merged copy. Paste. Then I can hide this, this, and this. So this is what we started with. This is what we started with. And this is what we ended up with. Now you could argue some of it still looks a little gaudy. It's true. This took what? 30 minutes? Now on a client painting, I could probably spend 8 or 9 hours just doing the hue variations. Just doing those. They are so specific. You can have total control over this. And in fact, if there's certain areas that I don't like the look of, I can literally mask them out. So if I create a mask and then I grab another painterly brush, come over to the mask, get black. And let's say I don't like these. I can lightly press in, temper that down, get it back to where it was. Now it is going to get rid of all the actual brush strokes and stuff. So you want to be really sure. But nothing with digital is permanent, man. Nothing's permanent, okay? You can do a whole lot with digital if you just trust your layer modes and you kind of work around using opacities and masks and things like that. God, you can do whatever you want. But yeah, let's wrap this one up. Let's cut back to big old mean mug of me, and we'll talk about kind of the final touches, other little tips you can use. And yeah, you'll be well on your way to getting amazing looking color variety in your shadows. And that will do it. So hopefully, that'll do it. Hopefully you guys like this first episode of Wes's Art Tips. Yeah, went on for a little bit of time. If you want them a little shorter, let me know. If you want these a little longer, let me know. Like I said, the next video, we're going to be taking a look at why using black in your shadows is usually a no-no. So I will be covering a variety of art topics. And really, if you want to join the Discord and mention something that you might have been having trouble with or a technique that you would like to know maybe how to approach it. Now, by no means am I like a master at every art approach that ever existed. I can just tell you the way that in a professional setting or for a client, how would I go about it? Because that's the thing about being a freelance illustrator or a painter or somebody. You're basically work on demand. But you need to hone your skills in such a way that no matter what comes across your desk, you need to be able to at least attempt with a myriad of different techniques how to get that result. So that's what we're going to experiment with here. So yeah, if you want to join up the Discord, it's absolutely free. If you want to join the Patreon, it's only $1 a month. I do have a shop with a whole bunch of tutorials on color theory and traditional painting techniques. A whole bunch of stuff. I think I have like 10 or 11 courses now. And all of them are very affordable and you get to keep them. It's video on demand, all the like bonus stuff and templates and everything. They're all yours. You can have so much fun with them. And yeah, it's yours to keep forever. I think the most expensive course is $10 and that comes with 14 hours of real-time video footage, which is crazy. But yeah, if you go over to wesgardner.art, That's where all of my stuff is. That's buying directly through me. But if you prefer Gumroad, if you prefer ArtStation, if you prefer Flip Normals, CubeBrush, any of these other online retailers, I'm going to have links to those as well. I'm kind of everywhere. If you search Wes Gardner ArtStation, you're going to find me. Wes Gardner, Gumroad, you're going to find me. So got it all there. But yeah, anything you guys want to see, anything you guys want to talk about, any technique that you want to master, let us know. Join the community. We would love to have you. But that's a wrap for Wes's Art Tips, episode number 1. So glad you joined us. And, maybe the most important lesson of all is you should probably go out there and make cool art. So, hey, we'll see you next time. Peace.